Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of the BBB Business Shield Cyber and Physical Security Series. I'm your host, Rick Myers, founder of Caldera Cybersecurity. I'm a cybersecurity executive with more than 30 years of experience in technology and risk management, and the chair of the BBB Business Shield Series. Our mission with this series is simple: to give small businesses and nonprofits the tools and confidence to protect themselves from today's biggest security threats. We're kicking things off with the horror stories, a conversation where you will hear real-world cybersecurity incidents from professionals who've lived them. These stories may sound scary, but they come with valuable lessons that can help our businesses stay safe and resilient. I'm joined today by an incredible panel. Erica Genti is the Micro Learning Innovation Manager at NMSU Global, where she designs pathways that connect micro credentials to workforce and academic opportunities. Her career spans nonprofit, government, healthcare, entrepreneurship, and higher education, and she also serves on the state boards to expand access to education and career growth. Next, we have James Downey, brings 28 years of government service specializing in digital forensics, cyber investigations, and compliance. Since retirement, he has taught cyber forensics and cyber law, worked overseas with the Department of State, and currently supports Los Alamos National Lab through TechSource. And then we have Dr. Mindy Brown, is the Director of Education at Intellitech College in Albuquerque, where she has served since 2021. With a background as a medical assistant and wound care specialist, she went on to earn her PhD in psychology, specializing in stress management. She brings that expertise to her students, helping them stay motivated and resilient in their studies. Beyond the classroom, she is active in the Albuquerque community through the Hispano Chamber of Commerce, the New Mexico Higher Education Department's Private Post-Secondary Schools Review Committee, and the Better Business Bureau Board of Directors for the New Mexico and Southwest Colorado. Together, we're going to share and unpack true horror stories from the field, cybersecurity incidents that have real impact on organizations, and what we all can learn from them. So let's get started. Erica, would you like to kick us off with your story?
Absolutely, Rick. This one is the invoice that shut down a city. Picture this: a bustling mid-sized city government, departments humming, projects moving forward, inboxes overflowing with contracts and invoices and updates. It was business as usual until one email changed everything. The setup: on a seemingly ordinary Monday morning, the project coordinator opened their inbox to find a familiar site: updated invoice for phase 2 work. The sender: a trusted contractor. The PDF: branded, polished, nearly identical to every legitimate invoice they'd ever seen. Click, open, nothing unusual. Forward, share. After all, it was standard practice to keep everybody in the loop. What no one knew is that they hadn't just opened an invoice, they had opened the door. The silent intruder. Hidden inside that PDF lurked a remote access Trojan, a rat, a digital burglar. Once unleashed, it tiptoed across the network, setting up camp in multiple departments as more and more staff dutifully opened the file. Within hours, the city's nervous system began to fail. Shared drives locked. Payroll, finance department frozen. Permitting, utilities offline. The digital heartbeat of the city flatlined. Chaos unleashed. Police and fire dispatch scrambled back to old school radio logs. Residents trying to pay their bills or file permits hit dead ends. City council meetings canceled because even the agendas were trapped. Headlines screamed: a city held hostage by an invoice. The trust of the citizens wavered as the city stumbled back into the age of paper and pens and filing cabinets. Weeks passed before normalcy crept back. For containment, once the rat was discovered, the city's IT team had to slam the doors fast. They isolated systems. Infected devices were yanked from the network immediately. Think unplugged to survive. Central servers were taken offline to stop the spread of encryption. Firewalls and email filters were updated to cut off the rat's communication with its controllers. A war room was created with IT, communications, city leadership to coordinate the next steps. Containment wasn't pretty, but decisive moves kept the digital fire from consuming every last system. After the smoke cleared, the road to recovery looked like this: Each compromised machine was wiped, rebuilt, and resecured with updated software. Critical systems like payroll and utilities were resurrected from offline backups. While tech was down, departments had to revert to paper forms and phone logs and in person approvals to keep essential services alive. Transparent updates were shared with the residents to try and maintain trust and explain the delays. And then cybersecurity experts were brought in who dissected the attack to try to understand the rat's path and ensure that no hidden backdoors remained. It took weeks, but step by step, the city reconnected its digital heartbeat. The scars left by the Invoice incident sparked long term reforms. Staff were drilled in spotting phishing attempts, even from familiar senders. Surprise test emails were sent out, and staff who clicked were retrained. Sandboxing and attachment scanning were introduced to stop malicious files before they were ever touched. Departments were placed in separate zones, so a compromise in one wouldn't cascade across the city. No file or connection was trusted by default, even if it came from a known source. A tested written plan was distributed so that the next time disaster struck, the response wouldn't rely on improv. Clean backups were stored offline, ensuring ransomware couldn't take the only copy. And there's some lessons that are etched in memory. One click can crumble an entire system. Human error is the most powerful entry point. Trust but verify. My husband always says, trust your neighbors, but always brand your cattle. Meaning familiar names don't guarantee safe emails. Divide and defend. Weak network segmentation made lateral spread a hacker's dream, but dividing a computer network into smaller zones or sections is like having rooms in a building with the doors locked. Train for the fight. Simulations and awareness could have raised red flags. And have a battle plan. Incident response isn't optional, it's survival. So the final takeaway? The city learned that cyber resilience isn't built on firewalls alone. It's built on people and planning and practice. One click nearly shut them down, but one plan made sure they would rise stronger. The moral of the story? Sometimes the scariest cyber attacks don't start with a hacker in a hoodie. They start with a simple invoice and a single click.
Absolutely. Erica, wonderful story. I had shivers up my spine as you were telling it. It was so well done. Let me ask a question. What year was this around?
This was around 2022.
Okay, so 2022. You mentioned a lot of things that let the malware spread, the rat spread across the network. Was there anything that was done correctly to slow it down, or was it completely carte blanche within the network?
It went all over through the network. Once systems started going down, IT shut everything down.
Yeah,
So that's how they contained it. They shut everything down, and everybody went to paper, and then they had to start untangling things from there.
yeah. So I hear an incident plan was in place, so they knew what to do, and they knew how to pull that together to
No,
contain it.
actually, there was no incident plan.
No, okay,
Everything was improv. And that's what they learned in this story is that they needed to have a plan for this because it was something they never planned for.
right. So just to wrap up, I heard incident plan is
Hmm.
needed. I also heard security awareness training
Hmm.
was important to train people about clicking things. Trust and verify.
Yeah.
Network segmentation, as you were talking about, where the network was isolated from other parts of the network, so it couldn't get through. Okay. And what else? Did I miss anything?
No, I just think that they need to assume they're going to be attacked.
Yes.
It's not an if, it's a when. So you can't protect everything, and the the tech is what gives you the defense. The policies are what make sure that the defense is used consistently, and the people are both your biggest risk and your strongest defense when trained.
And sometimes it's your last defense.
Mhm.
I call that the human firewall. So don't
Yeah.
leave it open. All right. Excellent story, Erica. Let's
Hey,
oh, go
can I
ahead, James.
interrupt there real quick?
Yeah,
Do you,
James.
did they put a financial loss on all this time and effort to
Um,
bring
it,
this?
it
Uh,
was pretty significant because it did slow everything down. They had to bring in a
mhm,
lot of experts, like the cybersecurity experts and all of that. But I don't have the figures on the financial loss. But it was pretty significant.
Yeah,
Very
and
good.
I think one point there on financial impact is if you have to buy credit reporting for those whose data may have been compromised,
Mm.
it's probably going to cost at least $10 a person, for that year's worth of support, maybe more. So if you have, just think about it, do the math, 1,000 customers times 10, okay, or 100,000 customers times 10 is something that you might have to have a cybersecurity, insurance policy or cash in the bank to help pay for that service.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I would
big implications.
estimate probably 15,000 customers in just the utility side alone.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep, and they all get that email that says, "Hey, you've been compromised, but guess what? You got some credit monitoring on the way." All right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Erica. Appreciate it. All right, Dr. Mindy Brown, what you got? You're up.
Well, we're a college, and our college accepts student funding from many different sources. A little while ago, one of the government funding organizations we work with fell victim to a phishing attack. The attackers gained access to their email system and then spoofed messages using the names of our employees.
Mm,
These fake emails instructed the organization to send student funds to a fraudulent account, which they unfortunately did. So at first, the government organization believed our systems had been compromised, but after investigation, it was determined that the breach occurred within their own systems. Now, I'm not privy to exactly how that occurred, but as a result, both parties have since strengthened communication protocols. Now, no changes to accounts or where funding is going to go is accepted unless confirmed through in-person or live virtual meetings. And although it took nearly 6 months, our students did eventually receive those missing funds that they were promised. But to the best of my knowledge, the funding organization was never able to recover the money that was stolen. We've had a few also smaller cyber attacks within our organization. Our student emails get hacked every now and then, phishing attacks as well. And then an email is sent to all of the students offering a position or offering usually a work study position if they send all of their information to, but we get those shut off really quickly. It would be great to learn how to keep those from happening though in the first place.
excellent. So email
Yeah.
and spoofed emails are usually used to trick those if they're not careful. Anything that you would have done or have been implementing to help either students or staff or anybody understand about phishing emails and spoofing and just how to check.
We've definitely sent out emails saying if you get an email from an employee that says, here, apply to this position, that's not from us. We wouldn't do that. We would send you to an organization that is hiring, but we would not send you a link to that organization's hiring location.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they follow orders. We're talking, thousands of students, so you never know.
Yeah, I think people are so busy getting all these emails every day, and they're trying to be diligent and read all their emails and get trapped in the quickness of trying to get through them very quickly. And they see a link or they see a call to action.
Yeah.
Click here. You got until tomorrow to do that, and then they end up clicking it, and then obviously getting infected or impacted by that call to action. People need to slow down. I always call it take the 7 seconds of for security. Take 7 seconds, look at the email, see who it's coming from. Is it spoofed? Is there a call to action? Is there some urgency? Is it from somebody who can affect your paycheck or your boss or anybody like that to scare you, use intimidation and slow down? And if it doesn't look normal, you have no obligation to click anything that comes in. I'm always telling people that you have no obligation. Call the person and find out, did you send me this? Right?
Yeah.
All
Look
right.
at those addresses. Look at those email addresses. You got to understand those domains are being are not as you're not be able to spoof those domains as they usually were back in the past.
Yeah.
But so you'll always tweak that domain just enough. So gmail.com might be gmailz.com. Always a little bit there just to spoof that and make it look like it's from Gmail or from a company.
Yes.
And
Yes.
isn't that the looking at the address HTTP versus HTTPS?
That's the link.
That's one that you catch up on. I really like that 7 seconds for security, Rick. I think that's really great.
Yeah.
Passwords are also one of the
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
links out there. They're reused, they're stolen, they're phished. That's why we have multi-factor authentication, but it still goes.
Yes. I think that will be a topic for a future podcast. What do you think?
I think so.
That might be good.
That's a great idea.
All right.
Students love MFA. They just they just instituted that on New Mexico State campus, what, 2 months last semester, I think, Erica, or a year now?
Oh, it might have been last semester, and all of a sudden we have 27 factors that we have to go through to get there, and the password is like 6,000 characters long. It's good.
That's why you have a password vault to fill that in. Okay, all right. That's a future podcast. So great story. So thank you, Dr. Brown. Appreciate it. Great story. James, okay, you're up.
All right. Well, I don't know if I'm going to, be as charming as Erica did on her story, but I'll try my best. But first of all, thank you for inviting me on this podcast. So, anywhere I can help, I'm here. So, what I'm going to describe is a incident that happened about a decade ago. It involved a large retail box retailer. Now, you got to realize that as a large box retailer, you may have stores globally. And at that time, this particular retailer had about 1,800 stores. So when you have 1,800 stores, you're going to have a very large infrastructure, very complex enterprise. And your data is going to be in different pots and different systems. So it's kind of sometimes when you have a large enterprise like that, you tend to have a lot of complications in terms of cybersecurity, vulnerabilities, and training that needs to go into these large scale computer systems. The incident in this case happened during a Christmas time, Thanksgiving timeframe, which is of course a very busy time of the year for retailers. At the time, cyber criminals entered this retailer's system and attacked their point of sale system. Now, most of you all know probably what a point of sale system is. It's where you basically do your transactions when you're stepping out or checking out at the store. The cyber criminals stole at that time roughly about 40 million credit card numbers and about 70 million customer records. The retailer first response was actually to be very transparent. They actually offered services, identity theft services, to help those customers. So you have 40 million people with potential credit card fraud issues. Now, it's not just the customers. Credit cards are a problem. It's also your reputation. And at the time when this happened, the retailer's sales started plummeting because no one would trust the retailer. Mm-hmm. Investigation showed that the cyber criminals actually came through a third-party vendor. The cyber criminals initially attacked a HVAC company that supported the retailer's HVAC systems. What they did was actually do the install and development. At the time, to be efficient, the retailer wanted to allow their third-party vendors that supported their operations access to their system. And this particular access was actually for a project management and billing system that this HVAC company used. One of their employees at this HVAC company had a phishing attack. Now you know we got a theme going here on this podcast. In this particular case, the employee for the HVAC company clicked on the email and a piece of malware was dropped into their system. Now, I guess apparently they didn't think that this company had anything valuable except for the credentials that were used by the HVAC company to enter the retailer's portal. They stole those credentials, went into the portal, and at that time they moved laterally over to the point of sale. And that's how they got to the credit card numbers and the customer records. Now, at the time, the credit card industry was moving to a chip on card situation. So where credit card numbers were not left on the terminal itself. It wasn't moving fast enough. And it was just kind of a new technology. I think it only been around for a couple of years during this time frame. So they were in the middle of deploying those terminals, but unfortunately, a lot of the terminals were still using just a slide type situation, and the numbers were left on the terminal. Roughly, after all the fines and the lawsuits and the remediation, the estimate cost to this retailer was about $200 million. Now, there was quite a few different things that could have happened in this situation that probably could have mitigated this issue. But one is starting again with the phishing email, training for the employee at the HVAC company. The other part was the fact that you had a third party accessing another company's infrastructure. There was no network segmentation. There was no least privilege principle used. And so it made it very easy for cyber criminals to actually go from the billing project management over to the point of sale terminal system.
And $200 million later.
Yes.
How long did it take for them to realize that this has happened?
So it took them roughly about 2 weeks after Thanksgiving when they realized that data was being taken off their system. The credit cards were moving outside their firewall.
Oh. So they were they still taking them for 2 weeks?
Yes, they were.
Yes.
They eventually isolated the terminals in that point of system and were able to clean and scrub out the malware. And they kept on using the system because, again, you got to remember, this is a very large retailer with a lot of transactions, and people used credit cards, especially during the busy time of Christmas, Thanksgiving. And they continued to use the same POS system. And then when they realized it was the HVAC company, they basically isolated them off their network.
Wow. And that was 10 years ago, right?
2013, correct.
Let and I'll make a quick comment, and I think we're kind of running out of time. But we, 10 years ago, yes, you can kind of see, how things would have been with no chips on the cards to encrypt the data going across those machines. All of the non-segmentation on the network, phishing, all that kind of new, stuff that would have been new to the technology, and people weren't accustomed to it, hadn't adapted to it. But even after 10 years, I still see these things occurring. I'm still seeing phishing emails. I'm still seeing, non-segmentation of network, all these things. The only difference is the bad guy is more sophisticated. No longer are you seeing phishing emails with broken English, or URLs that are pointing to a .ru, which is Russia, or it's just very blatant. Back in the old days, if you looked really closely, you could see, make sure it's legitimate or not. Now it's very sophisticated with AI being involved, and I think that's going to be another topic. And we'll be talking about that during our next podcast, talking about AI adoption in small business, the pros and cons. That's my little plug for the next podcast. But I think all three of these stories that we heard today were just phenomenal, and they really do resonate with a single point of issue here, where we have someone clicking a phishing email, getting infected, data being siphoned off, and large amounts of money being stolen from a business. So these podcasts are hopefully going to help people understand how to better protect themselves or become aware of what's going on. So any last words from the panel?
One thing that I really appreciated with James, your story, is that this organization started out with being transparent, because the most common reaction is to hide this and not tell anybody what happened. And they're in the middle of the most important shopping season, yet they chose to be transparent. And I think that was awesome. And then as we just maintain the mindset of that, we're not going to stop everything, but how do we minimize the damage? How do we recover quickly? How do we keep our businesses running? That resilience over perfection. So I really hope that this helps organizations.
Yeah, and I want to add in just, for folks who are listening to the podcast, one of the things you can take a look at is the risk to your company. What is the most risk that you're going to take concerning your data? So as Rick indicated, that these things are continuing to happen. So you really got to be focusing on what data is a potential detriment if it was out there in the public or stolen from you. Is there any particular liability, and how are you going to protect that data? So, and Rick was absolutely right. We still have phishing. Harrods department store in England had an attack on a third-party vendor that they used. So you got to understand, if you're using a third party, like the retailer did, you better understand, if they're holding data for you, what is their policies? What are they doing to mitigate risk on their end? Are you liable for that?
Absolutely. And that's most small businesses think we're too small. Nobody would target us. But in reality, attackers use these tools to scan the internet looking for weak targets. And so that's exactly what you had. You had this little HVAC contractor. They probably didn't think, what are they gonna find here? And that's even what you said, is that, initially they didn't find anything, but they were the link into bigger things.
Yes, they were the link into bigger customers. And I see that even last year, I saw 5 different situations where a lawn care service got compromised, started sending out spoofed emails with malware attached. I saw an HVAC company. These are small little companies. And if you're listening out there, if you're a small little company, and the things that we talked about today are, you're scratching your head going, what is phishing? Then you need to continue listening to these podcasts and doing some education around what can affect you and your customers. And that's the worst thing. That's your reputation. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. What an incredible set of stories today. We've seen how cybersecurity incidents can strike every angle: phishing, ransomware, inside threats, and more, and how the right preparation can make all the difference. The common thread in all those stories is clear. Security isn't just about technology. It's about people, planning, and taking small steps that prevent big problems. This first episode of the BBB Business Shield series shows that while the threats are real, the solutions are practical and achievable for every business. A huge thank you to our panelists, Erica, James, Dr. Minda Brown, for sharing your hard-earned lessons, and thank you all for joining us at this launch of the series. Be sure to tune in to our next episode, Talking Shop with AI, where we'll dive into the growing use of artificial intelligence in business. We'll explore how AI is transforming operations, the opportunities it creates for small businesses, and the risks you need to watch out for as you put it to work. I'd like to especially thank Erica and Mindy for their help in making this podcast a reality, along with the support from the staff of the Better Business Bureau serving New Mexico and Southwest Colorado. I'm Rick Myers. Thank you for listening to the horror stories. Together, we can make our businesses stronger, safer, and more resilient. Thank you.